Can connected TV really perform better than mobile in some cases and unlock audiences that you just can't get in mobile apps? Hello and welcome to Growth Masterminds, the podcast for growth marketers. My name is John Koetsier. We all know mobile's massive. It's really good. It performs incredibly well. But what if there's a new channel that's not just competing with it, but in some edge cases, even outperforming? Channel where you can repurpose some creative, target some different audiences, and reach people that you might never find in a game or another app. That's the promise of CTV advertising, which of course we know is growing super fast. Today, we're diving into it with someone who knows the space firsthand. We're at the head of growth at YouAppi. Her name is Michal Schwartz. Welcome, Michal. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you so much. Very exciting to be part of this podcast. So let's dive into CTV performance.
Awesome. Super pumped to have you. Before we get into CTV performance, we're going to talk about all the stuff, right? Like what's working, what's not working, creative, verticals that it's working for, all that stuff, measurement, tons of stuff. I want to talk about you. You took an interesting path from Playtika to YouAppi. How'd that happen?
So I joined YouAppi actually almost a year and a half ago, I have to say, to lead the CTV inside of Apple Group. YouAppi is part of the Apple Group. So I'm working with different teams across the Apple in order to grow our CTV.
What did you do at Playtika?
So in Playtika, so I started my journey in Playtika as a senior user acquisition. Afterwards, I went to ad monetization actually in cross-platform.
Cool.
Cross-platform, I have to say. And in the past 2 years in Playtika, I was basically growth lead, meaning focus on CTV for brand, but also for performance, working with different DSPs, with the different publishers, also buying CTV for brand purposes on YouTube, working closely with Google. And so because of that, based on my experience on CTV in Playtika, and I thought it's the best fit for me after Playtika is to go to the other side and to be more closer to the product side. And because when you're on the advertiser side, there's a lot of limitation that you can see. So what was for me very interesting to join Appi and actually to be a part of the growth of the CTV programmatic, channel that we have here, and to work closely not only from the client side, but also sales and operations and creative, and also to work with different clients that we have here, from gaming to fintech to health to everything. So it's very interesting to come from one hat from the developer side and to go to the second hand of the publisher side. So I think I have a lot of added value in terms of what is advertising actually looking for.
I think that makes a ton of sense. Absolutely. I think having both perspectives is really, really cool. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you as we go through this. Let's start with the top. I said something a little bit controversial, probably. Can CTV really perform better than mobile? We talked about it when we prepped about this. And obviously, it's hard to outperform mobile across the board in general at large. But there are some instances where CTV is actually doing better. Talk about that.
Yeah. So what we're actually seeing in the past 2.5 years, I have to say, thanks to them and P sides that, help us to attribute the performance based on CTV. So in some cases, we do see that CTV is performing much better, much more competitive in terms of CPMs and CPIs. And also don't forget the amazing reach that we have on TV devices. When I'm talking also about CTV, it's very important to distinguish between, OTT to CTV, that OTT is over the top. It's more on, streaming apps and mobile environment versus, the big screens. So when I'm talking outperforming, from my experience and what we're doing here in YouAppi, is mostly focused on the big screens performance wise versus the mobile environment. And we do see, as I mentioned, better performance in terms of CPM, CPI, progressions, but it's really changing between types of clients. In some cases, we're seeing it for example, on some of the reward apps or fintech app or gaming app. So it's really not the same for each and every vertical that we can say out.
It's actually a really interesting thing to talk about, right? I mean, from a lot of different perspectives, because you're going to have a different creative experience. You're going to have a different immersive experience. I unfortunately have a lot of streaming apps, right? And so some of them I've got, and they're totally ad free. And some of them, like Amazon Prime, I get some ads on that. And Paramount Plus, I get some ads on that. And so, I get some experience. It's probably a good thing for me. Get some experience with what it looks like to get ads on CTV and how much attention I pay to that. And how much do I pull out my phone and look at other stuff? And how often do I get asked to do something, look at a QR code? Not very often, but it does happen
Yeah,
occasionally. Other things like that. I think it really depends on context as well. Like, what kind of content am I watching in terms
exactly.
of what kind of ad works or makes
Yeah.
sense?
So I have to say, first of all, CTV performance, it's a lot of education, also in terms of the creative wide. Like, for example, for when I started, when I was in Playtika, so we thought that, the creative that we're putting on the linear also work on CTV. So meaning like we can't use what we're doing on the mobile, but we need like to do like, special things for CTV big screens, like big promotion, big, productions and stuff like that. But from what I'm seeing, like in the past, I think year and a half, we're understanding that we can take mobile videos and we can convert them to be CTV videos, and you don't need to do the big production and the big names and the big celebrity that you're putting.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that actually we have like best practices when we're talking about CTV ads. And as you said, like a lot of more and more streaming apps, for example, like becoming more and more, ads alignment. We're seeing if it's a Roku, we're seeing if it's like Amazon Plus and Pluto and a lot of, CTV apps that we're buying from them. And we do see that, for example, that they're not necessarily we need to put like we can put the same gameplay that we're putting on mobile, but also on big screen. But yeah, these a few things that we need to make sure when we have a creative on TV.
When you take that when you take that creative from a mobile device and you put it on a big screen, are you like flipping it? Are you like doing vertical in the middle of the screen? What are you doing?
No, so we have like the format is like 16:9 in terms of like it needs to be like landscape. Okay. And
Okay.
also, yeah, so we have like the guide that we're like sending our clients. But for example, if we're talking like a creative, so the best practice is to have like 15 seconds and 30-second formats. It needs to be with voiceover, subtitles, for example. It's also something that is very, very important for us. Of course, if the client can do that, also we can do it here in house. Like we have a creative studio here in YouAppi, so we can help clients for that. But yeah, but you need to have voiceovers, subtitles. You need also in the end, for example, to engage the user actually to download the phone, as you mentioned, like to take the phone and to QR or to, search for the app for the app store. So it's very important that you have like a clear CTA. If it's like a QR code, so scan here. Or also in the voiceover, like to put a QR, please scan me now and get if you have any promotion, for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Reason to do it now.
Yeah.
I like that you mentioned having subtitles because sometimes, to be honest, the ads come up and I'll just turn the volume down. So if you have the subtitles, then it's still communicating.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very important. Also, in the end, for example, like in some cases, not necessarily you understand if it's not gaming, for example, you don't understand that it's an app and you need to download that. So it's very important also to put the logo of the stores in the end with a search bar, just to make sure that the user is actually understanding that what they need to do and to make sure that it's like, to engage them actually with the app. Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about verticals again. We kind of hit it at a very high level, and I want to talk about verticals. And it seems to me, and I'm asking for your validation or no, you're totally wrong. Either one is fine. It seems to me that many different verticals can work on CTV, but context matters and your ad matters and how it works. Talk about verticals, what you've seen work and maybe what you've seen fail. And maybe some verticals are better for this or maybe some aren't.
It's interesting questions because, like for example, for the gaming, so in some cases, I can see that in gaming we do see CTV performance succeed. Not in each category, I have to say. I have to say in some specific categories in gaming, we see a little bit more difficult. For example, role playing is something that it's much more challenging. I have to say, but for example, casual social casino skill base. It's something that
Yes.
we definitely see that, it's scaling up. I think that we're also seeing amazing, examples from if it's companies like Scopely or Playtika or Dream, for example, like doing a lot of CTV ads over there. So you have an example that you can see actually what they're doing. Yes. But in terms of like, for example, if it's fintech, if it's health, for example, health, it's a little bit tricky. I don't see like much success over there, yeah, but I do see success on a reward on fintech. Travel also, travel is very interesting. I think also some cases, it's very important that, you know, we can see success in one region, but not necessarily on the second, like another region. I will
Yes.
explain better that in some cases we have a client that want to do like CTV in the US, but because we have also supply, it's also something that we are very like working very hard towards that we have supply worldwide and not necessarily only in US. So
Mhm.
we see in some cases that one title will work amazing in Mexico or Brazil and in APAC, for example, but in US the competition is a little bit too tough. So
Mhm.
we prefer maybe to focus on, different regions and to give also the added value for the client because we have supplies, outside of the US. Not all of the SPs that running CTV have supply outside of the US. So for us, we sometimes like say, you know what? Let us take the rest of the world besides US and we see the success there versus, the US part.
Super interesting what you're saying about different geos. I mean, it's kind of cool. I did a little mini report on the Singular blog recently about entertainment and stuff like that and how different it is across different geos. LATAM is crazy about these
Yeah.
telenovelas or short little
Yeah.
video
No,
things. I mean,
yeah.
and we see other geos that are crazy about that as well. What are you seeing in terms of CTV for different geos? Are there some broad learnings that you can draw out?
Yeah. So when I started to run CTV, I have to say, so I really focused on US when I was like in my previous job. But now I think like in the past year, we're seeing more and more streaming apps. For example, like Roku that like have a supply outside of the US. They're actually like they're working with different, SSPs and publishers. And we're seeing like the major reach that we have, for example, in Brazil and Mexico. Also, Europe is very, very interesting, but Europe, I think it's a little bit challenging. We will get it in a second, but we do see like and more increase in terms of interest, not only from the client side, but also from the supply side on
Mhm.
different regions. And also to have like, for example, Japan, like a lot of questions about Japan. Like we think that the CTV is getting very attractive there. And we understand that, for example, in terms of CPM, the CPM is very expensive in Japan versus US. So, and also the approach is very different in terms of buying there because you don't have a lot of traffic necessarily on the open market and you need to create deals. It's like different set of rules when you're working, CTV in US versus, Japan or Europe, for example.
Mhm.
So yes, we're seeing more and more streaming apps that actually working very hard to be, globalized in terms of the supply and
Yes.
not to focus only
Yes.
in the US.
I can imagine one of the challenges of Europe is just the so many divisions and languages and nations, right? And each one is quite small compared to, let's say, a Mexico or a United States. You know, you've got Germany, I guess maybe 100 million people, maybe 80 million, something like that, right? And it goes down from there, right? So is that one of the core challenges, or is it just customer behavior?
It's also, I think the main challenge in Europe is privacy, I have to say. So we know that not necessarily like the measurement of CTV is relying on IP, meaning that we can track the users. And as we know, there's a lot of restriction in terms of tracking and privacy regulation in Europe. So it's for us like when a client want to do CTV performance in Germany. So or in UK, for example, or France or Italy. So we do have the supply, but from my experience and also past experience when I did, we're saying that you need to understand that not all the traffic will be trackable. And we need to look on Europe as much more as a brand performance and less than pure performance in this case.
And then adopt measurement technologies like incrementality or
Exactly.
other things like that
Exactly.
to see what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah, exactly. To do like incrementality, brand lift, search lift, service, if they like to do other metrics and also to look at the organic trends, of course, in order to track the CTV like efficiently in Europe.
Question that came up as you were talking about different geos was device, because sometimes we have this assumption that CTV, it's on the big screen that hangs on the wall, right? Or it's furniture. But is there a significant chunk of CTV that, whether it's Amazon Prime or Paramount or Disney Plus or Apple TV Plus or whatever, is happening on a tablet or even a handheld device?
First of all, yes. Think about you. Like, for example, when I'm flying or you're flying, you have your streaming apps on your tablet or
Yes.
your mobile phone.
No,
And
I'm working every second of every flight.
yeah,
Every
wow.
sec.
Employee of the month, of the year. Yeah. So yeah, of course, there's a lot of streaming apps like, on the mobile device and tablet. And I think that in the end of the day, it's like a measurement part because it's like mobile and mobile, flow. It's not like cross device, I have to say. So we treat it a little bit different, but one is because of the MMPs, I have to say. As you know, like these like MMPs really distinguish between CTV to OTT, like to
Yeah.
different devices. So yes, there's a lot of inventory on mobile and tablet to fund and streaming, and it's definitely something that we also have access and we can do. But I think that for now, like our main focus is to do like the cross device journey between the big screen to the small screen, because this is the most successful journey that we saw so far in terms of performance.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. And it's interesting, right? You mentioned cross device, there's cross platform as well, right? Because you're on CTV and then you need to get in. It's interesting to see if eventually the big streamers, the big companies here, media companies, start making their mobile and tablet apps clickable, like ads clickable inside them. We know Roku is doing some interesting things there with the
Yeah, it is
Roku
stunning to see
remote.
them.
There's some pretty cool stuff, shoppable ads that they've got, basically, the connections that they've got into Shopify, other things like that. That's pretty cool. You gotta assume Amazon's gonna do something like that at some point in Prime. I
Of
mean, come
course.
on. You've got the world's biggest store
Yeah.
pretty much. There's probably a bigger one in China, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure. You've got a
No,
massive streaming service.
if you're asking me, I think that first of all, it's going to be like for now, we're using like regular format in terms of the creative. But if you're asking me, like a year from now, we will see like special dedicated creative that like Amazon Prime will ask us, to implement, for example, on mobile environments. So you have and native, you have interstitials, you have rewards, you have like different kinds of creatives on the mobile environment. So I do think that also on the CTV it will be like that. It will be much maybe more interactive ads that you can do. So I do think that CTV in terms of like, evolution, I have to say, like the next step is definitely is going to be much more oriented to mobile and, mobile creative, I think, or more in terms of form of
Huh. So what you're saying is right now you talk CTV ad units and it's pretty much the same thing across the board, right? You've got a small unit, maybe 5 seconds. You've got some of that on YouTube TV, right? You got 15, you got 30, you've got some minute long chunks, but they're pretty much all the same. Whereas on mobile, you've got a great diversity of different ad types that come in at different times for different lengths of time as well. Even playables. Imagine playables on CTV. That'd be kind of cool. What remote are you using? How would that work? I'm not totally sure. But you're saying you're going to see a greater diversity of ad types on CTV.
yeah. This is
Cool.
exactly what it's to say. You said
That's
much better to
awesome.
me. You so
I
I did,
don't,
yeah.
I don't think so.
No, no, no. I'm just saying that like it's very interesting when I started like I think almost like 3 years ago, and to see now the CTV in terms of the we have much more supply. We have like in terms of the MMPs, we have can do
Mhm.
CTV user acquisition, but you also can do CTV retargeting. It's something that we're seeing that it's like more and more clients also want to test like, okay, we know CTV is a user acquisition channel, but in terms of retargeting, it's also something that we're also educating our clients that there's an option what is an option? It's actually we're seeing that and we're doing that we're seeing that cases we're reaching users on TV that we didn't reach it on mobile in terms of the segment we're targeting. So we do like internal analysis and we're seeing, okay, so 20% of the users that we reached on TV and we touched them on TV screen, we didn't touch them on mobile at all. So it's also something that clients understand the added value of, cross device. Also
Right.
retargeting aspect.
So many things come to mind as you say that. I still remember, and I brought it up a couple times on Growth Masterminds over the years, the surround sound marketing, which I heard from a performance marketing manager at Clorox of all places. She's since moved on to all kinds of different places and done cool stuff. But that surround sound marketing is getting the same message or a similar message about a particular product or app or service or whatever it might be from multiple angles, multiple directions, and multiple media, right? And how powerful that impact can be. All of a sudden, a brand is everywhere, right? Not everywhere, but there are 3 places that you happen to see them. And that strengthens the message. That makes a ton of sense. Like, cool. So let's talk about the future of CTV. I mean, we've seen tremendous growth there. We're still seeing, it's still kind of early days, especially for mobile publishers to come there and to adopt the platform for marketing. What should marketers be thinking of right now? And how should they be thinking of CTV over the next, let's say 12 to 18 months?
I do think that we will see much more brands, not brands, but much more different categories from gaming to e-commerce and retail, understanding the power of CTV programmatic buying, understand that they don't need to spend, huge budgets in order to see performance over there. And they will start to understand that CTV is actually one of their regular channels in terms of, marketing and budget planning. I think we still have measurement, challenges, education challenges, supply challenges in some cases, but it's going to be very, very interesting because I think we just in the beginning of making CTV as one of the biggest growth marketing channels out there. And yes, I think that in the end of the day, with the help with the different MMPs, we will have much more availability and access, and also to the client side that they will have much more transparency. Because I think one of the challenges that we have in CTV, it's a lot of education. They not necessarily understand how to set the attribution window, don't understand, the boundaries between mobile to CTV to organic and how to find the perfect mix in terms of, budget wise and allocation wise. So I think there's a lot of, education part that we need to do. And we're already doing that thanks to the partnerships that we have with the different SSPs, publishers, MMPs, that we do see a lot of, interesting, and a lot of clients ask us a lot of questions around that. And so I do think, and also, as you see, also Amazon is going towards there, Netflix is going towards there. You see the huge streaming apps going towards
Yes.
ads because they understand the impact of that. They understand the added value for that. So I think, once we see the supply out there growing and we see the education is growing and we see the different MMPs that helping us with attribution wise and also give us the right tool to measure the CTV, I think we will see much more explosion in the next, 2-3 years from now.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate your insights. Great chat.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.